It was a calm morning in Whoopi Goldberg's upscale neighborhood. The sun had not yet risen, and the streets were eerily quiet. Birds chirped lazily in the distance, and the rustling leaves in the breeze added to the peaceful serenity. That is, until the sound of roaring engines shattered the silence. A convoy of black SUVs appeared, their headlights cutting through the dawn mist. The vehicles moved slowly, yet with purpose, and soon the street was flooded with men in black suits, bulletproof vests, and dark sunglasses. Their expressions were cold and unreadable as they surrounded Whoopi's mansion, blocking all access points. It was clear something big was about to happen. At 5 a.m., the neighbors were still asleep, except for a few early risers taking their morning walks. They quickly realized something was wrong when they saw the heavy presence of law enforcement. The air was thick with tension as the agents moved quickly, taking control of the area with precision. Then, the sound of banging on the front door broke the stillness. 3 loud knocks echoed through the quiet house, startling the sleeping Whoopi. Still groggy, she walked to the door in a light gray robe, her hair in disarray. She opened the door, met by a sea of stern, expressionless faces. "We have a search warrant. This is a federal investigation," an agent said, flashing his badge. The words were like a bomb, exploding in the early morning silence. Without hesitation, the agents flooded into the mansion, taking control of the situation with practiced efficiency. From the outside, the neighbors whispered in shock. Whoopi Goldberg, the Hollywood icon, the woman who had graced screens for decades, was now the target of a federal investigation. What had she done to warrant such an action? As the agents rummaged through the mansion, the neighborhood buzzed with confusion and curiosity. What secrets were hidden within these walls? Inside the mansion, the FBI agents moved systematically, inspecting every room, opening drawers, and sifting through personal items. Whoopi stood in the center of her grand living room, arms crossed, watching them with a mixture of confusion and concern. There was no fear in her eyes, just an unsettling calm. The search seemed endless, and every corner was examined. The agents were meticulous, leaving no stone unturned. One agent, wearing white gloves, reached for a drawer in Whoopi's personal library. The drawer was filled with old movie scripts, contracts, and personal letters spanning decades of her illustrious career. But one document stood out. It was an old, worn envelope sealed with a strange symbol. The agent carefully retrieved it and examined it, but there was no sign of what it could be. "I've never seen this before," Whoopi said quietly, as she watched the agent inspect the envelope. The agent didn't respond. Instead, he nodded to his team, signaling them to continue. The tension in the air was palpable. What had they found? What was hidden in her home? Why had the FBI been so thorough in their search? The question hung in the air, unanswered, just as the agents were preparing to move to the next room. One of them shouted, "I think we found something." The rest of the team gathered around as the agent opened a dusty old box in a rarely used part of the house. Inside, there were files, books, and what appeared to be more confidential documents. But the most shocking discovery was a small metal box hidden beneath the stack of papers. Whoopi watched in silence, her mind racing. She didn't recognize the box, but it was clear it had been concealed for a reason. The agents quickly sealed it and transported it out of the mansion. The mystery was only deepening. Outside, the press began to gather, their cameras flashing relentlessly. The crowd outside swelled as news of the raid spread. But the agents remained tight-lipped. The questions piled up, but the answers remained hidden within the mansion's walls. By the time the FBI finished their search, the story had already exploded across every major news outlet. Headlines screamed, "FBI raids Whoopi Goldberg's mansion. What's being hidden?" Social media was flooded with posts, theories, and questions. Whoopi's fans were confused. Her colleagues in Hollywood began to whisper. And her reputation, built over decades of work, was suddenly in jeopardy. Whoopi, known for her sharp wit and public persona, had never been one to shy away from controversy. Yet, this was different. This wasn't about an offhand remark on a talk show or a bold political statement. The FBI was involved, and the public had questions that Whoopi couldn't easily answer. As she watched the news unfold, Whoopi decided to address the situation head-on. She called a press conference. Determined to regain control of her narrative, she appeared calm, composed, but there was a noticeable edge to her voice when she began to speak. I know what you're all thinking, she said, addressing the press. But let me make one thing clear, I have nothing to hide. What the FBI found were just old letters, scripts, and personal documents from my career. There's no conspiracy here. The press conference was a mixed bag. Some reporters were satisfied with her explanation, but others pressed further, asking more pointed questions. What had the FBI really found? What was inside the mysterious box? Who was she communicating with that warranted such an investigation? For Whoopi, the stakes had never been higher. The world was watching, and the pressure was mounting. She knew that this story wasn't going to go away anytime soon. But she had no idea just how deep the investigation went, and how much more was about to be revealed. Days passed, but the media frenzy continued. Rumors swirled about Whoopi's connections to powerful figures in Hollywood, and the mystery surrounding the FBI's search only deepened. Reports began to surface about Howard L. Emerson, a once prominent Hollywood producer who disappeared under mysterious circumstances in the 1990s. Whoopi had exchanged letters with Emerson, and these letters were now at the center of the investigation. Whoopi was shocked to learn that her name had been linked to a man who had vanished from the public eye for years. Emerson was rumored to have been involved in a massive financial scandal that shook Hollywood to its core. Why would Whoopi have been in contact with him? Was she connected to his disappearance in some way? The FBI's investigation revealed that Whoopi had been in correspondence with Emerson in the early 1990s. The letters were innocuous on the surface, discussing potential film projects that never came to fruition. But beneath the surface, there were hints of something darker, references to a mysterious event that occurred one fateful night. Whoopi had written, "I know what happened that night. If the truth comes out, we're all in trouble." The media went wild with speculation. What was this night Whoopi referred to? Was she involved in something sinister? Had she been part of a cover-up? The questions only intensified, and Whoopi's name was now at the center of a major investigation that had the potential to shatter her career. The investigation took an unexpected turn when FBI agents discovered a hidden room in the mansion. Behind a wall, they found a secret passage leading to a dark basement. The air was thick with dust, and the shelves were filled with old boxes, many sealed and untouched for years. What was in these boxes? Who had hidden them, and why? The agents began to carefully open each box, revealing a collection of old documents, some of which were marked confidential. As they sifted through the papers, one agent uncovered a letter sealed with a wax stamp, a symbol that was eerily familiar. It matched a symbol tied to a long unsolved case in Hollywood's history. The letter was cryptic, written in elegant handwriting on thick parchment paper. If this letter is found, it means the truth was never meant to be known. It read. The agent was stunned. This letter had been hidden for decades, and its contents could change everything. The FBI knew they couldn't jump to conclusions, but they couldn't ignore the connection between the letter and the mysterious events surrounding Emerson's disappearance. Was Whoopi involved in something far more significant than anyone had imagined? What did this letter mean? And how did it end up in her mansion? The mystery deepened, and the public was more eager than ever to know the truth. But the answers remained just out of reach. As the investigation continued, public opinion about Whoopi was divided. Some believed she was innocent and had simply stumbled upon something far darker than she realized, while others suspected she was hiding something much more sinister. The media was relentless, and the pressure on Whoopi only intensified. In an exclusive interview on a major talk show, Whoopi finally broke her silence. She spoke calmly, but her eyes betrayed a hint of anger as she addressed the rumors and accusations. "I know what you're all saying. I've heard everything," she began, "but let me be very clear, I have nothing to hide. Those letters, those documents, they're part of my personal collection. Just memorabilia from my career. That's it." Her explanation seemed to calm some of the public, but many were still unconvinced. The mysterious letter, the secret room, and the FBI's continued investigation were just too much to ignore. Could she be telling the truth? Or was she concealing something far more dangerous? The tension reached a boiling point when the FBI released a statement. They had discovered more evidence linking Whoopi to the long-buried scandal that had haunted Hollywood for decades. Whoopi's career now hung in the balance. The questions were piling up, but the truth remained elusive. The days following Whoopi's interview were filled with heightened anticipation. Public opinion was split. and the speculation around the raid had taken on a life of its own. Whoopi had maintained her innocence. But the pressure was mounting, both from the media and the industry. Hollywood, a place where a single scandal could destroy a career in an instant, was now watching Whoopi's every move. The FBI continued their investigation in secrecy, despite Whoopi's insistence that the letters and documents found were part of her personal collection. A few inside sources began to leak more details. A series of old photographs was discovered among the materials. They featured Whoopi with various prominent figures in Hollywood during the late 80s and early 90s, including Howard L. Emerson, the producer whose disappearance had haunted the industry. The more the FBI dug, the more they began to suspect that Whoopi's connection to Emerson wasn't as innocent as she claimed. What caught their attention was not just the letters but the photographs, which showed a side of Whoopi that no one had ever seen before, a side that was close. Too close to the powerful figures behind some of Hollywood's biggest scandals. One of the agents who had been following the case, Agent Michael Harris, became increasingly convinced that Whoopi was more involved in the scandal than she was letting on, despite her insistence that the photographs were just from old movie sets. Harris couldn't shake the feeling that they were all part of a much bigger web of deceit. Inside Hollywood, whispers about Whoopi's past resurfaced. Some former colleagues claimed that she had always been too clever, too well connected, for her own good. Her sharp tongue and bold opinions on The View had made her a divisive figure. But her connections in the entertainment industry were even more fascinating. Those who had worked with her in the 90s now found themselves wondering if they had missed something back then, something that had been carefully buried, waiting for the right moment to resurface. As the investigation intensified, Whoopi was forced to confront her past. She was approached by a former associate, someone who had been involved in the same film projects as her in the 90s. This person, a veteran director named Alan Brooks, had worked closely with Whoopi on several controversial films. Over the years, they had lost touch. But now, with the FBI closing in, Brooks contacted her. "We need to talk," Brooks said when he called. "You've got to come clean about Emerson. The truth is, I think the FBI's only scratched the surface." Whoopi, though still maintaining her innocence, could feel the weight of his words. She had no choice but to listen. Brooks revealed a secret. In the early 90s, Whoopi had been involved in a hush-hush project with Emerson. The film never made it to production, but some powerful figures in Hollywood had invested heavily in it. Emerson, according to Brooks, was about to reveal explosive information about certain influential people before he vanished. "Whoopi, you knew about the project," Alan said, his voice filled with urgency. "You might have been used. Or worse, you might have been in deeper than you realized. That film project could have been the key to a massive scandal." Suddenly, the pieces of the puzzle began to align. Whoopi had always denied any personal involvement in the disappearance of Emerson or the controversial film. But now she realized that her name had been linked to some dangerous truths. Alan urged her to speak to the FBI, to tell them everything she knew. But Whoopi, ever the pragmatist, wasn't sure she could trust anyone. She had learned over the years that Hollywood was a place where people disappeared, both in front of and behind the camera. Could she trust Alan, or was he just another person trying to manipulate her into revealing something that could end her career? As Whoopi struggled with the decision to come forward, her situation worsened. The media circus surrounding the FBI raid showed no sign of letting up. In fact, as more details about her connections to the mysterious producer Emerson came to light, public opinion began to shift. She could feel her career slipping through her fingers, one headline at a time. Film projects she had been attached to were frozen indefinitely, and the talk show she co-hosted was now dealing with backlash from sponsors. But it wasn't just Hollywood that was turning on her. Her fans, those who had supported her throughout the years, were now divided. Some believed in her innocence, while others felt betrayed. Social media became a battleground, with some calling her a victim of a conspiracy and others accusing her of being part of something darker. One evening, after weeks of pressure, Whoopi sat alone in her mansion, reflecting on everything that had happened. The weight of the past, her success, her relationships, her controversies, was now overshadowed by one question: what should she do next? She could choose to stay silent and hope the storm would pass. But in her heart, Whoopi knew that silence wouldn't clear her name. If she didn't come forward now, The truth would remain hidden, and her career might never recover. The truth, however painful, had to come out. The next day, Whoopi called her lawyer and arranged a meeting with the FBI. She knew it was time to confront the past head-on. She had nothing left to lose and everything to gain. The truth might not set her free, but it was the only thing that could restore her integrity. Whoopi Goldberg sat across from the FBI agents, her calm demeanor masking the storm of emotions brewing inside her. The truth had been buried for too long, but now it was time for it to be revealed. As the agents reviewed the documents she had handed over, they seemed to pause at one specific letter, a letter she had written to Howard L. Emerson in 1993. The letter had been buried in the deepest corner of her memory. But reading it now, she realized how much had been left unsaid. "I know what happened that night." The letter read, "If the truth comes out, we're all in trouble." Whoopi's hands trembled slightly as the agents continued to examine the letter. This was it, the moment she had been dreading. The scandal that had rocked Hollywood, the one she had been unknowingly tied to, was about to come to light. It was a web of corruption, secrecy, and betrayal, and she had unwittingly become part of it. However, as the truth unraveled, Whoopi finally realized the magnitude of her role in the whole affair. While she had been caught in the crossfire of a larger conspiracy, she had also been a key player in uncovering the truth about the lost film project that had once been considered too controversial to make. The film would have exposed the corrupt practices of some of Hollywood's biggest names. But Whoopi, ever the survivor, refused to back down. "I didn't know everything, but now I do," she said, her voice steady, "and I'm not going to hide anymore." The FBI agents exchanged glances, impressed by her bravery. The case was far from over. But Whoopi had finally taken control of her narrative. She had faced the truth and was ready to fight back. In the weeks following her confession, Whoopi's career took an unexpected turn. The public's perception of her began to shift. While some still viewed her as part of the scandal, many saw her as a courageous figure, willing to confront her past and expose the truth. The FBI's investigation continued, but Whoopi had regained her footing. Hollywood, though wary, was starting to acknowledge that Whoopi Goldberg wasn't just a survivor of the industry's darkest moments, she was now one of its most resilient icons. Her journey wasn't over, it had only just begun. As Whoopi stepped back into the limelight, she knew there would be more obstacles ahead. But she had learned a powerful lesson: the truth, no matter how painful, was always worth uncovering, and she would continue her journey, determined to build a future that was truly her own.